Welcome to this Giftworks video. My name is Steve Faithful, and in this video, I want to talk about the receipting functionality that's contained within Giftworks. There are a number of areas that I'm going to try to cover today, including the Issue Receipts checkbox, the receipt group, and then also producing receipts themselves. I'm going to be using a brand new Giftworks database, so I have no donors and no donations in my Giftworks database, and I'll show you a little bit of how the different areas work. Let's first start by going to the settings area of Giftworks. The first thing I want to show you is the receipt groups. And to do that, I'm going to click on the Customize link. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to Change Giftworks Fields, and I'm going to go down to Receipt Groups, and I'm going to click on the Change Field button. Now, a receipt group is simply, it's a list of groups that you can use to segment the production of your receipts. So right here, you'll see I have receipts, which is the standard group that by default all receipts would go into. But then there's also, in my case, I have a year-end receipts. I could also add different receipt groups. Let's say I had I want to do a monthly receipt. Or I wanted to do also, let's say, a combined thank you and receipt. So sort of a combined acknowledgement and a receipt. I can do that as well. So this allows me to kind of segment or delineate the different receipting processes that I may want to use as part of receipting donations that I get. So once I do that, I can click on Save. Now I have my receipt groups. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go check out the receipting defaults. And by that I mean, if I go to Customize again, and now I'm going to come down to Default Values for Giftworks Fields. So we've set up our receipt groups, and that next thing I need to do is indicate that for every new donor that I add to Giftworks, what do I want their receipt settings to be? And this is going to be used so that you can customize each donor may have their own preferences with regards to how they want to be receipted. And this simply indicates how you want each donor to be set up as soon as you add them. And I'll show you what I mean a little bit more in a second. Well, I'm going to just keep it, I'm going to indicate that I'm going to keep this checked because I want to indicate that every new donor that gets added to Giftworks will be marked as they want to be issued a receipt. And then I'm also going to put them, I'll keep them in the receipt group, but I could pick another one if I wanted to use it as a default. So I'm going to click on Save. So what we've done here is we've now set up the defaults for Giftworks. So every new donor that gets added to Giftworks, I'll be issuing them a receipt, or they'll be marked as they want to issue a receipt and what receipt group they want to be a part of. Click on Save. Now I've saved that. So we've set up our receipt groups, and we've set up the defaults when adding new donors to Giftworks. Well, let's go over and let's go add a donor. So I'm going to click on Add a Donor, and I'll just add myself. I'm going to go through and I'll skip over some of this information. I'm going to get to the end of the Add a Donor process. I'm going to say add more details for this donor because I do want to modify a little bit more. Now, if I scroll down to the bottom area, you'll notice that it defaulted to Issue Receipts and the Receipts receipt group. And this is pulling in from those defaults that we just set up in the settings area. This is an important distinction. What we set up in the settings area simply drives or simply controls the defaults for when you're adding your donors. So now I could go ahead and change these now if I wanted to. I can simply, maybe mark them as a different. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to just change this, and I'm going to send the combined thank you and receipt. That's the receipt group that I'm putting them in. And I'm also going to indicate that this donor should be issued receipts. Now I'm going to click on Save. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another donor. And let me just add Jonathan. Go through and we'll do the same thing. Oops, I'm just going to edit him now. Scroll down to the receipt area. You notice it's once again pulling in those defaults that we set up in the settings area. And I'm going to leave him on receipts. So I'm going to indicate that he wants to be issued receipts, and I'm going to put in receipts. And then I'm going to click on Save. And then I'm going to add one more donor. And I'll add Mike. Go through. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify him a little bit differently than we just did the other two. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to indicate that he does not want to be issued receipts. And I'm going to click on Save. So we've added 3 donors, 2 of which have been set to that they want to receive receipts and what receipt group. And then for Mike, we indicated that he does not want to receive receipts. So remember, when we set them up in the settings area, that's what controls when you add a donor, what the defaults for the donor will be. That's important now because now we're going to go add some donations. I'm going to go over to the donors dashboard, and I'm going to see that I have Steve, Jonathan, and Mike. First, I'm going to right-click on Steve, and I'm going to say Add a Donation. I'll just say $100. And you'll notice that right now, when we add a donor, when we add a donation, the donor's receipt options will be pulled in or will be used to control the defaults for this donation. So you'll notice when we added Steve, remember we changed it defaulted from what the settings were originally, meaning it defaulted it to issue receipts to the receipt group, and I changed it. I changed Steve's setup so that he gets the combined thank you and receipt, and that he should be issued a receipt. So that's why when I add a donation for Steve, it's pulling in those settings for this donation. Click on Next. If I scroll down, I can see those settings as well. You'll see down at the bottom, it's issue receipt, yes, and what receipt group. And if I click on Save, now it'll be ready to be issued a receipt. And we'll do that in just a minute. Let's go back to our dashboard. I'll right-click on Jonathan, say Add a Donation, and I'll do the same thing. And you'll see that now he's pulling in the receipt, the issue receipt and receipts from his settings. Remember, so they're all, when you add a donation, it's pulling in the settings from the donor. So the settings control the donor, and the donor settings control the adding a donation. Click on Next. I can scroll down, verify that that's the case, and click on Save. Now, if we go back and we add one final donation from Mike, by now, I'm sure many of you have guessed, when I get to this next page, it's indicated because Mike is set up not to issue a receipt, it's not going to be issuing a receipt. Now, I could override that and certainly make any changes that I want, but I'm just going to indicate that Mike does not want to be issued a receipt. Verify that down at the bottom and click on Save. Now, when I'm ready to begin to produce receipts, I go over to the mailing section. You'll notice that I have 2 receipts that are scheduled to be sent. Remember, Steve and Jonathan wanted to be issued receipts, and Mike was not. We did not have that issue receipt checkbox, so he's not part of the receipting process at this point. Now, I could always go back into my donations. I'm going to go to the donation dashboard. If you remember this one, I can always go back in and modify this for Mike and say that I now want to issue a receipt, and choose the receipt group, come back to mailings, and I'd see him added to the receipts. So keep in mind, so that's how the receipting, whether a donation is being received or not, is being controlled. So the settings control the donor settings control the donation, and then at any point you can change the donation, which drives which donations need to be receipted. So now I'm going to come in, and I'm going to click on the donation receipts, and I can choose now which receipt group I want to produce. I could choose either the receipts, the combined thank you and receipt. I could choose any one of these, but I know for us we have 2 that are here and 2 that are in the and 1 that's in the combined, or I could just choose all. I'm going to choose the one that's combined thank you and receipt, and I know that's me. I know that's the donation I gave, I believe. Oops, let me just change this over here. Come here and I see the one donation that I gave is part of that receipt group, and so I'm ready to receipt it. Click on Next. I can go through, choose the receipt. I'd probably want to choose, in this case, I'd probably want to choose a combined thank you and receipt at the same time. I don't have one in here, so I'd have to make one. Choose a combined one. And as a side note, for those of you who do a combined donation, a combined thank you and receipt, you're going to want to make sure when you get to the end of this process, you check off this little box at the end, which says receipts are also used as thank you letters. This will both receipt it, mark the donation as having been receipted, and as it having been acknowledged or thanked. Once I print this, I can click on Done. Go ahead and record it. Now, if we go back to look at Steve's donation, I can double click on it, scroll down to the bottom, and I'll see that it was acknowledged today and that it also it was receipted today. Oops. And it was also receipted today. So you'll see that it's receipted, acknowledged in one step, doing that mailing and then checking that box at the end to indicate that they wanted to be thanked, that they were part of the same thing. So if I go back to my mailings now, I'll see that two donations are left to be receipted. And I'm going to produce just, I can go through, just click on the receipts. If I do choose one that doesn't have any, it'll say there are no donation receipts for the selected options. I can also, so I can just choose, or I can just choose all receipt groups, which I'll do. As you're expecting, choose recipients. I'll see that Mike and Jonathan's donations are ready to be receipted. Now, we do get many questions at different times saying, well, I have people that are in there to be receipted, and I don't want them to be receipted. Perhaps they've already been receipted, and you just indicated that you just said that, perhaps you already receipted them and you don't want to send out any receipts. So you really want to cancel these receipts or get them out of this receipt mailing. I know many people will go back to donors. They'll, let's say, edit Mike. They'll scroll down. Actually, no, maybe Jonathan is a better example. They'll edit Jonathan, scroll down, and they'll say, well, I don't want to issue receipts, and they'll click on Save, and they'll go back to the mailings, and they'll wonder why it's still there. If you remember, it's still in here. Jonathan's receipt is still here, and that is because, don't forget, even though I unchecked Jonathan's settings, meaning I set up Jonathan, I changed his settings, so that I did not want him to be receipted, it's not going to change any donations that have already been marked. Remember, the settings, the default values in the settings area drives the donors, how donors are going to be set up, and then the donor settings will drive the donations. Once the donations have already been created, then you would need to change them at the donation. So I could go in, I'm going to go back, and even though now Jonathan is marked as he does not want to be receipted, I'm going to go over his donations, see his donation right here. I'll edit this, and now if I wanted to remove it, I could simply uncheck it on the donation rather than on Jonathan. Now, if I go back to mailings, I'll see that there's only one receipt left in there. That's for Mike, because I've now removed Jonathan's donation from the receipting process. Keep that in mind that if you have receipts that are in here, you're going to want to change them on the donation, not the donor. The donor simply drives the donor settings simply drive when you're adding a new donation, how the donation should be set. Once it's already set up, any changes you'd want to make, you do on the donation itself. Now, for those of you who have many receipts that you want to change settings for, we do have some tools. If I go to the settings area, and if I go under additional settings and tools, we have what's called a smart update. If I click on smart update, I can scroll down and I can say, I can find change receipt settings for received donations. So if I had a number of donations that I wanted to change, perhaps I wanted to remove them from the receipts, perhaps I don't want to produce them, yet they're already marked as that they should be receipted, I can use this, click on next. I'm going to choose a smart list, which is just all donations. You may have a smart list which identifies the specific donations that you're referring to, but I'm going to click on all donations, click on next, and I'm going to say I do not want to issue them a receipt, and that I'm going to leave the receipt group unchanged. It doesn't really matter what that setting is. I just want to issue that I don't want to do that. And it's going to go through, and now for all those donations, it's going to mark them as they don't want to be receipted. Now, some of them had already been receipted, and it didn't matter. It's not going to unreceipt them. But I am going to go, if I go back to my mailings, I'll see that I have no receipts in there to be. So it took any of the donations that were indicated that they should be sent, that marked any donations that were marked to issue receipts, it unchecked them, so now none of them were going to be sent. So you could use the smart update to update a number of donations if you had many and you didn't want to go through one at a time. You didn't want to go through each donation one at a time. Now, if at any point you ever wanted to reissue a receipt, let's pretend let's take two examples. The first one is for Steve, in this case, who had already been issued a receipt. I can clear the receipt. And once I clear it, it's going to take me through a mini process if I want to go and reprint it. Perhaps I need to modify something. I'm going to indicate that I don't want to reprint it now. I'm just going to clear it. And now if I wanted to, I can edit this gift. And you'll notice it's marked now to be issued, because it now, when you unreceipted or when you cleared the receipt, it still wants to be receipted. So if I go back to my mailings, I'll see that it's kind of queued up now in my donation receipts mailing to be sent a receipt. And I could go through and re-receipt it, and it'll do another number. Let me do that really quickly. And just verify. You see Steve. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Let me go back. And we got to John. I think, was it Jonathan that we cleared or Steve? Got a little confused there. Yes, sorry, we were on the right path. So I'm going to go and issue my receipt again. Sorry about that, a little detour. Come back. You'll see my receipt. Go through, select my letter again. I'm going to generate this mail. Click on next. Now I'm just going to issue a receipt for this. If my guesses are right, we've issued a number of receipts. I think we issued 2. So this one's probably going to, if I go back here, if I see Steve, I'm going to double click on this again. If I scroll down, we'll see that receipt 1 was sent on 12/7, and then receipt number 2 was sent here. So once you record the receipts, it'll kind of continue to increment the receipt numbers. If you don't know, the receipt number can be changed in the setting area under accounting, change receipt options. So you see how we can do it. The second example, the first one, what we went in and I showed you for Steve. If I had already issued a receipt, I can simply clear it and reissue it. For Mike, I think, Mike's donation, I don't think we ever receipted it, has not been receipted. And so at any point I can just go in, go down, say I want to issue the receipt. I can choose which receipt group, click on save. If I go to mailings now, I'll see that he's ready to be sent a receipt. Go through, verify that's Mike, and I can go ahead and produce it and receipt it and be done. So I hope that helps you better understand some of the receipting processes and some of the receipting capabilities within Giftworks. Remember, when you set up the settings, you're going to first set up the receipt groups by clicking on Change Giftworks Fields and modify your receipt groups. Then you can come down to the default values and choose the default values for receipting, both whether they should be issued receipts and what receipt group, and that will drive every time you add a brand new donor to Giftworks. Those settings from the default values will drive what the donor should be set up. And then whenever you add a donation for a donor, it will use, when adding the donation, it will look at what the donor's receipt preferences are and then use them to add your donation. And then once you have your donations, then you're going to indicate whether they should be receipted, and then you'll produce receipts in your mailing, and you can control and you can modify or change the receipt settings on the donations themselves by simply editing the donation and scrolling down to the receipt area. And you can even use smart updates to change batches of donations if you need to. One more thing while I was there mentioning that, you can also, in addition to using a smart update to manage the receipt settings for received donations, you can also change the receipt settings for the receipt defaults for smart lists for donors themselves. So if you wanted to change perhaps you wanted to change a whole set of donors at one time to change their defaults, you can use that as well. So I hope some of that information helps you better understand receipting inside of Giftworks. Thanks for watching.